All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is the first AMA for this virtual hackathon. Welcome everyone. My name is Constantina, and I am going to moderate this call along with Kiki. We also have Bas. Bas is our web performance specialist engineer coming today to reply to some questions. How this AMA will work is that we have already a list of questions that have been pre-submitted from people that they couldn't join. Firstly, I'm going to give the floor to Bas. He's going to a little bit introduce himself and explain some basics on his work. And then I'm going to ask some questions that they have been pre-submitted. And I'm going to also open the floor to questions for people who are joining us in the room. If you are watching us on YouTube, on AMO, or you want to ask us any question, but you're not in the room right now, please do ask the question on YouTube. We will be monitoring. Also on Matrix, we will be monitoring something Bas said, anybody said, and sparkled a question for you. Please do ask them that. Just a note.
If you are watching.
Sorry, Kiki, what did you say?
Sorry, it was me. Sorry, I was just like looking at the YouTube live stream just to check. I'll mute myself.
No worries. So again, if you also don't like to speak, you can ping either me or Kiki directly, or Michael. He's also here to help, and we will voice your question. Just a note and an important note: no matter your frustration, no matter the circumstances, please be civil. If you're not civil, I am not gonna voice your question, and I am gonna eliminate you from the room or wherever you are asking that question, which platform. So be civil, be nice. We are all hopefully nice people here, and we are gonna have a nice conversation. Without then further ado, I'm gonna give the floor to Bas, and he's gonna talk a little bit about himself and the work, and we can take it from there.
All right. Thank you, Kiki. I'm Bas. I'm a principal engineer at Firefox. I've been working on Firefox for about 16 years, and for the last 7 years, I've been focused on Firefox performance. as the tech lead for Firefox Performance, I'm kind of tasked with making sure that what we are prioritizing and what we are resolving are match the biggest issues that our users are facing. I collect and analyze data that we receive from you or that I gather myself in the browser, and then I talk to internal stakeholders and performance engineers kind of about what the most important work is to address those issues that people are facing. And in the meanwhile, I'm trying to maintain somewhat of a solid technical understanding of the Firefox code base myself. When it comes to browsers, Firefox offers what is essentially the only web engine that is run by a nonprofit, and for whom the healthy open web is the primary driver of our product choices. And that means that we are able to offer a browser which consistently offers the best experience in terms of user privacy. However, the reality is that the amount of sacrifices that users are willing to make on their user experience in order to have that privacy is limited for pretty obvious reasons. This means that when browsing the web, Firefox has to be competitive with the browsers that are built by the big tech companies in terms of speed and reliability of the experience. Websites have to work, and they have to work fast. If we fail to consistently offer the best experience, if we fail to deliver on that, then true privacy is only available to people who are willing to compromise on the rest of their experience. And if that were the case, both Firefox, the web, and all of its users will be worse for it. But aside from all of the analysis that we can do ourselves and all of the ways in which we can make the browser faster and more reliable, the most important ones are the ones that matter for you, the users. So we need our community to help us understand where our users feel they need to compromise on their browser experience when they are using Firefox. And that, I think, is the main reason that we need the community.
Cool. Thank you very much, Buzz. I'm gonna now ask some questions. So question number one. By the way, I'm gonna also ask a little bit, not necessarily web performance directly questions, just to also have a more like not lighter conversation, but a little bit more social conversation and get to know each other. Buzz, I do know that you're in Mozilla for quite some time because I know you for quite some time. How many years are you here?
16.
He's older than me, and I'm very.
Yeah.
There you go. He's older than me, and I'm very proud of that. Somebody who is more years than me in this company. I mean, there is always
2009, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There you go. And awesome. So there you go, folks. I am 2012 December. Buzz wins and makes me happy. And with that note, the first question that came in, somebody is asking, how can we tell if a website performs poorly due to connectivity issue or web performance issue?
I mean, it's kind of a difficult question because you can't always, but it's not at least necessarily obvious from using the website itself. I think the most obvious way, which hopefully, probably you've thought about yourself, is are other websites performing well? If one website is performed particularly poorly for you, then and another website and all other websites seem to be fine, then it is likely related to the site itself. Another way that you can do it is you can use some of the tooling that we have to determine that. I think there is another question pending which is related to the tooling, so we might look a little bit more at that in that case. And the one that I hate to say, but is a way that you can check it, try that same website on another browser, right? If the result is radically different, then it is clearly not a networking issue.
Got it. Following up, because you just mentioned tooling, the next question coming to you is performance tooling can only be handled in the app front end, or Mozilla can do browser engine scale?
Yes. So this question, I don't exactly know what is meant by it, but I can interpret it in one way. and that is that when it comes to performance tooling, is that the responsibility of the end, when we say app front end, of the website itself, or is there more of that responsibility in Mozilla? And I think the reality is there that Mozilla can do a lot to help. When it comes to making your website faster, Mozilla can help provide the tools that you need to do that. What Mozilla can't do is actually make your site faster, right? So using the tools that you are given and that Mozilla makes available and that other browsers make available, that is still the prime driver of making your website faster. Having said that, other ways in which Mozilla can help is web standards. When it comes to making your website faster, particularly when it comes to real user monitoring, collecting run metrics on how your website is performing in the wild, you are dependent on what the web can offer in, given the constraints of privacy and things like that, to you in order to analyze how your website is working for users. And when it comes to tooling like that, the tooling that can be built by companies like SiteSpeed and other run providers, the tooling that can be built is what can help you, is where Mozilla can help you have an impact on what new features are required from the web as a whole. And that will obviously help you analyze your performance for all your users.
Thank you. I'm gonna like a little bit move away a little bit by the tooling and ask a clarification question, which I found an interesting one because a lot of time users don't know what's wrong when they see something, and they're asking, is there a difference between web performance and browser performance? Things like crash, memory leak, are these part of web performance? That might be self-explanatory to some of us, but that might not be the case for a user where they say, my Firefox doesn't work, and they don't know why.
So this is a good question, I think. It is also an interesting question, because when we speak internally about performance at Mozilla or at Firefox, or if we look at something like the Web Performance Working Group in the W3C, what we are generally talking about is speed. However, we do understand that for a less technical audience, if you will, for a regular person, if a browser crashes and I ask you, did your browser perform well? You're going to say, no, it did not, right? So while internally, when we speak of the performance team, we tend to focus on speed, and that does include memory, because memory usage and things like that play an important role in how fast the browser can run. We tend to understand that when others talk about performance, they might be talking about other things like crashes and things like that. And it is not always trivial for the end user to see the difference. If something is so slow that it appears frozen for 20 seconds, you might have already closed it, gone on to something else, and just considered it didn't work. Similarly, if there is a web compat issue that requires you to click a button like 5 times, kind of rage click it in order for something to happen, you might think that the browser was just being slow. So while we kind of make that distinction internally for I think reasonably good reasons, when it comes to talking about performance, I think we neither distinguish between the web or the browser. And I think it is important that our users help us understand all of the situations in which the browser is not delivering on the experience that they expect in terms of their browsing experience of the web.
Thank you, Bas. With that, I want to open also the floor in case there are any follow-up questions. We have one. Speed defined as speed to render or speed of tasks performed on page?
I think all of that, right? And I don't think you can necessarily distinguish clearly when you, for example, click something, right? Click. If you're typing on Google Docs, let's take that example. The rendering is an essential part of your experiencing the typing as well, right? If the letters aren't appearing on the screen, you're going to feel like if they all, everybody's probably seen this at least at some point in their life, right? If only in the past with Word or something like that, where you're typing and you're getting ahead of the thing and the letters just appear like a second later. All of the stuff that you typed appeared. Technically, maybe you've not completed the task of typing any slower, but the fact that it rendered so slowly means that you're still going to experience that website as not performing as well, right? So I think that all of the ways in which your task completion is very important. And I think the speed in which the website runs its JavaScript, at which the website renders its user responses, all play a major role in how somebody will perceive the performance of that site.
May I ask a follow-up?
By all means.
Is speed measured, let's say I open a page, is speed only measured on day one? Or do we also let that page linger and then revisit it on day 15 and see if it's also performant? I've continued browsing in the background. I've done other things. This tab has been minimized. Now, 1 week later, is that still fast or speedy?
I think that the realities, right? That is the type of thing where we are even more dependent on our community and our users giving us feedback than for other kind of simpler, more static performance issues. It is totally feasible for websites, for example, to have memory leaks in their JavaScript code, which means that they end up slowly leaking memory over time. So if they're open for a week and you go back for them, that website might have built up, 10 gigabytes or the worst case I've ever seen, I think, was about 62 gigabytes of memory use. And so that website was abysmally slow. And when you switch back to it, actually the whole system became slow because it tried to page all that memory use back in to some extent. And so, but it is not realistic for us internally to test every website and let it run for weeks or months, right? And then see how well it works when somebody gets back to it. So it is very important that when users experience those kind of things, that they give us feedback and, if possible, share things like about memory logs or profiler traces and other things that help us understand what was going on for them in those cases.
Thank you, Michael and Bas. Following a little bit about measuring speed, somebody is actually asking about analysis tools. Like, what are you using to do your work? And the exact question is, could you please tell us about the analysis, I guess, analytics tools you use in your work?
So the most important things that I work with when we are looking at the browser are the in-browser tools to understand how and why a website is performing in a certain way. So some of the most important ones that are involved with most of the things that people report, I would say the prime one is the Firefox Profiler. I got this neat little shirt that I'm wearing just for the occasion. And the great thing about the Firefox Profiler is that it makes it fairly easy to create a trace of a website that you can then share with us. Because if you are recording a trace, it makes perfect sense that you cannot necessarily understand what it says unless you happen to be of a very technical audience. But that trace can really help us to understand what was going on your device when you were having a poor experience. So people sending us these reports through Bugzilla or other channels is kind of a primary way, and we collect information from our users about how Firefox is working. And so that's also why it's the primary tool, I think, that I tend to work with. Another tool that's quite important is about:memory. If you type that in your browser, it will list out all of the websites that are running and how much memory each website is using, but not just how much memory each website is using, but also which aspects of the site or of the browser are using that memory. So we can see, is it a video playing that is using that much memory? Is it all the images that Imager is loading, or is it the chat, the Twitch chat that is using so much memory, which really helps us understand what causes these problems. So I think when it comes to tooling, we do occasionally use other tools, right? It's not like the rest of the developer tools aren't useful for understanding performance. Sometimes it is important to understand what aspect of the DOM of a page's design is causing performance issues, in which case other tools are used, but I think the profiler and about memory sort of stand out as the primary tools that tend to be involved in understanding both networking issues, rendering issues, JavaScript issues, but also memory pressure issues and things like that.
Cool. Follow up on about memory. Do we need to enter it in the same Windows bar, a new window tab?
No, it will give you all the windows. If you go to about memory, it is a browser level overview of the memory usage. So it will be sorted by content process. A content process is generally created for each website, for each domain, if you will.
There's no need to deviate from your session. You can just open a new tab, enter about : memory, and it'll give us all that information.
Yes. And you can also, in that window, you can save that to a JSON file, which you can attach to a bug or provide to our support, which helps us analyze the problem that you might be having.
That's awesome.
And if you forget any of this, if you file a Bugzilla bug, you will actually, there's an automated system that will ask you to do these things because we're lazy like that.
Talking about Bugzilla, if somebody wants to follow up your amazing work, maybe contribute, is there a dedicated component for
Several?
Okay.
Actually, yes. So if you're looking at Bugzilla, for those technical, the more technical audience that like to look there is both a performance engineering component, which is about parts of the browser related to performance, like certain like our own internal tooling and traces and things like that. So they are to track our work. And then there is a number of performance components like performance general, performance page load, and things like that, which actually track user problems, which are meant for people to report issues in with those aspects of their browser's performance.
All right, we have. Sorry, Kiki, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, there is a follow-up question about the yeah.
There is a follow-up question, says solve the at import inside the CSS that doesn't cause. Sorry, I didn't read it fully. Is there anything in mind to solve the at import inside CSS that doesn't cause cascade loading?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, to be honest. I don't have the written comments in the channel comments in front of me. If you can put it into the chat.
Perhaps they're not. Is this Denny's question or a different question?
That's a different question.
Apologies.
That is a question. Is there
the at
anything
import inside a CSS? I do not know the answer to this question. We can follow up on that internally if we want, if the person would really like the answer. But this is a little bit too much on the web standard, on a part of the web standard side that I'm not involved in. I do believe that Emilio will know the answer to this, so you may want to follow up with him.
For those of you who don't know, Emilio is everywhere, and probably does know. Like for those of you who haven't met Emilio, he's a pretty amazing guy. Another follow-up question. From time to time, we on the Sumo support Mozilla get questions like, all the websites became slow after Firefox update. What a user can do in this case?
That's an interesting question. There have been a few, but very few times that I can remember an update actually doing something that made this happen. In most other times, when we see reports like this, it is either something that changed about the browser that changes the perception of how well things are working, or it is just the fact that a new session was started, the update restarts the browser, right? And something happened that wasn't expected. Or in some cases, in one case, I remember when people when somebody reported this, what they meant was that all of their websites are now no longer loaded. So each time they clicked another tab, it had to actually load the website, right? Because when the session gets restored after the update is applied, but that was basically something that would have happened to any type of restart of Firefox they would have done, except in this case, Session Restore was restoring all of their tabs. So it kind of depends on what they are saying is slow. A lot of the time, when we get feedback from people in like certain forums where we can't really talk back, things like the Google Play Store reviews, people say everything is slow. And the problem is you kind of know that isn't true, right? Because unless your whole device has somehow gotten slower, there's very few things that we can do that would affect everything. So what exactly is slow is incredibly important for us to understand. Without that, it is really hard to help anybody. And the same is true in this case. I would encourage any of those users to actually submit a profile. It's very easy to do, and help us actually look at what is slow and what they could be perceiving as being slow.
I just want to say that the opposite can also be true, right? Like I sometimes, and it's not sometimes, it's not rare that I see people on Firefox subreddit, for example, saying that like after the last update, Firefox feels snappier and things like that. So, like it can be the same kind of like causation, but probably in the different direction.
And that hopefully is on purpose, I would say. Like I can label clear Firefox releases that were significantly several percent faster than the one before that. So we're kind of hoping that people feel that in the long run.
Can I follow that ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah, you can.
How often are we doing that? Like, like performance improvement on like a scale, like a higher level.
Like we have a team of people and members of other teams that are all contributing to making Firefox faster every day, right? So I would say that every release of Firefox is hopefully faster than the one before. We might make specific parts might accidentally get slower and things like that, right? But performance has a lot of different aspects. I would say on average, we tend to make Firefox faster every release. There are releases where we've shipped more significant changes that'll have a bigger impact on the user experience and the perceived performance of Firefox than other releases. So it's not like every release is equal, but I would say that every release tries to move in a positive direction. Sadly, the web also gets heavier and heavier and more expensive over time. So some of that is just a race of catching up with the features that web developers are using.
Michael, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. My follow-up question was just specifically about your session restore. If I am doing a session, if a user is doing a session restore, and it could be any user, and they have a lot of tabs, let's say 100,
That's
and
not a
they
lot of tabs, but okay.
You're too kind.
I think our telemetry shows there's users with 60,000 tabs open.
But the question, let's say a user visits one window and opens a few, and several of those, let's just say, linger in the minimized state for a week. Is there when it comes to session restore, is there a time limit? Is it important that I visit those tabs and make a decision whether to load them quickly or not, or to forget them? Or over time, could those states be lost, degraded, become slow to load?
To the best of my knowledge, and there's people better suited to probably answer that part of the question, there is no situation in which we on purpose decide to ditch those things if they reach a certain age. I would say that as time passes, your chances of accidentally losing your session will certainly go up. So, if there's something important there, I would say there's better mechanisms to make sure you keep that around than putting them in the background and going, I'll come back to it in a month from now. Like if you're trying to remember to pay your taxes, that's probably not the best way to do it.
Thanks, Michael. I'm going to give the floor to Paul for his question, and then I will voice Danny's question that came a little bit before to ensure we don't lose it. Paul.
No, thank you very much. First of all, further to the comments you're saying about profiles, I've had to use that in a work context, so outside of Mozilla, and the detail that it can provide and the information it can provide a team looking at performance of a website is startling. Fractions of a second of a page load and seeing exactly where something is going wrong is quite a unique view. Question I was going to ask was many years ago now, a venerable Mozillian put together a guide for Sumo around crashes in Firefox and how to diagnose them. We've had some cases recently which appeared to be potentially memory related. Would it be possible, not again, I'm not going to try and put you on the spot right now with exact cases, but would it be possible to catch up at a later point and just sort of walk through some of these cases with you so I can then potentially update that guide to then share it with the rest of the team, even if it's not you specifically, yeah, another contact possibly, to just see if we can improve the guidance that we've got in that space so that when something does come in, we know how to diagnose it better and also how to respond to users.
Certainly, I think that when it comes to crashes and particularly memory crashes, Andrew McCrate
Right.
would be a good person to talk about. He has more expertise on the details of memory crashes than I do, and there's numerous people that have more experience analyzing crash reports. But
Yeah.
by all means, reach out and we can make sure that we figure out.
Uh,
Because I'm certain that the guide is outdated at this point, and there is if it's that old, and that there is better things we can do these days to
yeah,
diagnose these issues.
I think this guide was put together, I guess, early 2017.
There's probably new tools and better tools that we've got. Some of these.
Okay. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I am voicing Dennis' question. It's a little bit about what we talked before, so we're circling back a little bit to about memory. And Firefox about memory analytics often does not correspond to the data displayed in Windows Task Manager. What may cause this?
So this is complicated, and I hope I get everything right. If you look at all the way at the bottom for each process, there is a couple of numbers which should roughly correspond with what you see in Task Manager. Now, there is a couple of things that make this more complicated. The way, I forget which the default columns in Task Manager are, but measuring memory in a complex application like Firefox is actually quite difficult. And the same is certainly true for Chrome or Edge or anything like that as well. Because Firefox uses multiple processes and isolates sites in various ways from each other. That means that you can take the definition of the amount of memory it is using in multiple ways. Trying to get not too technical, but if a process, for example, is sharing 10 megabytes of memory with another process, so they are using the same memory in the system, and they are using the same, and they're accessing the same data there. Do you count those 10 megabytes onto both of those processes? Do you count them as neither? And do you count only the memory that is private to a process? Or do you say, we'll count that memory proportionally? So if 10 megabytes is spread across two processes, we'll give both of those 5 additional megabytes, and that will, take the full 10 megabytes. And if another process starts accessing that same 10 megabytes, all of those processes actually use 1/3 or 33. What was that? My example was 10 megabytes, 3.3 megabytes of memory. Now, Windows Task Manager makes a certain way choices in how they do that accounting, and our about memory makes certain choices in how we do that accounting. So that can explain most differences when we compare them to the numbers at the end of the about memory report per process. If we look at the difference between memory that we explicitly label, which is memory that we know what it does, and another category of memory, which about memory lists, which is called heap unclassified. The heap unclassified is memory where Firefox is using memory for some reason, but it hasn't been labeled as what that memory is doing. And so that particular memory is a different number again. And so that's why the numbers of the explicit, what a site is explicitly using, can be quite different from the website. But the numbers at the bottom of the about memory for each process should always match roughly what Task Manager is reporting. And if they're not, then that, or depending on what you're setting, which columns you're setting in Task Manager. If they're not, then that's an interesting thing that we should look into. And we'd love that feedback so we can investigate further.
Cool. Someone is saying on YouTube, Firefox is cool, thanks. Well, thank you for being here. Always makes me happy seeing comments like this. I'm just gonna go back to some questions we have pre-submitted. What are the most effective and easy to implement steps to reduce a website's initial load time within the first couple of months? How can this achieve with CMS like Drupal and WordPress? That is kind of a full question.
Yeah, so I have to say I saw this question because it was added in advance. I am not a web developer, right? And my experience with Drupal and WordPress is extremely limited. In the general sense, there's a couple of things I would say one can do. Avoid frameworks. Like when you're building a website, avoid things like React or other complicated frameworks. I don't know what all of them are called. There are so many these days, right? Angular or whatever. Those tend to inject a lot of JavaScript in your page, and all of that JavaScript has to be processed. And that is fairly expensive, and you cannot cache it. It has to be done on page load. It has to be done every time somebody goes to your page. And that is hard. In general, if you make a static page, or a page, the page itself doesn't need to be static, right? But if you rely on the declarative features of HTML to build your page, then it will tend to perform best. I would also say in that, always look at the size of your assets, right? So in the end, for a lot of users, particularly on mobile settings, particularly in 4G, 5G settings, things like that, the biggest bottleneck when loading a simple page will be the network. So if you have that like 3 megabyte image and you're only presenting it fairly small, try compressing it more, right? Or downsizing it. That might actually help the quality as well. So it is, I think, minimizing your asset sizes. That includes the amount of JavaScript you ship. That includes the amount of images you ship and things like that. Text is really fast, right? For obvious reasons. And that will be the biggest thing you can do to make that website appear faster. And the other thing is minimizing the amount of JavaScript that you have to execute in order to show your page, especially in order to show your initial load. Then finally, I would recommend that you profile it locally and see what is actually taking the time, because that is the best way in the end to understand, because it can be something silly, right? It's really easy to accidentally do something silly that drastically slows down your page. Don't, that you're blocking on some request or something like that to show most of your page. Remember, the most important thing is how people perceive the performance of your page. So if you can show them 95% of what they care about, show it as soon as you can, right? And don't let the rest of the page wait for the one thing they may not even need. Yeah, there's a pretty vibrant and active web performance community where there's people that have way more expertise on this kind of thing than I do. And I'm sure they are more than happy to help you out. I think it's an invite-only Slack, but there's like all these web performance community events and things. If you look for them, I'm sure people there can really help you out. And of course, if you are still struggling, Matrix is public, and we have channels on there as well where people can ask for help.
Thank you very
maybe an
much.
interesting, sorry, maybe an interesting example of this, of how silly things can be. I had at Perf Now, which is a web performance conference in Amsterdam last year, somebody came up to us with a question about something being slow, and we found out that their, I think it was the TTL for their DNS, for their page was set to something like seconds. So basically, as people were using the website, the DNS server was doing lookups again and again and again and again for everything they did on the site, and it made it really slow. And it was really obvious once you used the tooling, but they had never thought to look there.
Always use the tooling is the answer from Bas.
I recently waited 15 minutes for a prompt to return, and then I realized I was looking in Apple Searchlight. I typed my prompt into Searchlight and proceeded to wait 15 minutes for Apple to return some sort of result I was happy with. So it happens.
I don't think Bas is the right person to ask this question, but since it came up, I will ask it. Is YouTube intentionally making Firefox slower when we use AdBlock?
I would say probably not, but you can, like, I don't like to be conspiratorial about these things. Like, we've had performance issues on Google and Microsoft properties. Whenever we diagnose one of those and we ask them, they immediately fix it. I've rarely, like, I don't have evidence of any malice. I will say that when you're using app blockers, one of the things that can happen is they can block certain traffic. And so I've seen this case, for example, that happened, was true for a while, a couple of years ago, where there was a framework that would wait for 5 seconds in order to show the website because it wanted to reach some backend server that it was using. It was some analytics tool that people were using. And so the app blocker was blocking that. And so it ended up always waiting those 5 seconds for the thing to not return in order to show all of the rest of the website. It just had a fixed black div or fixed white div across the entire page that it only removed after it got a response or after that 5-second timeout. Those types of things are not super uncommon. So ad blockers can make websites feel slower just because they're waiting for something that they're expecting to get from the ad server, and they're not getting the reply because the ad blocker is getting in the way.
We have a related kind of, we already talked a little bit about tooling and what tools Bas is using. Somebody is asking, I'm looking forward to knowing about Google Lighthouse sites measuring alternative, if it could be an option. Bas already talked a little bit about the tooling that he's using. I don't know if you have any other open source or other alternatives that you would like to recommend, Bas.
So when it comes to Google Lighthouse, it has a lot of functionality, and it obviously provides valuable data for website developers in terms of their core web vitals, which then again translate to Google search rankings, right? So there's values that Lighthouse provides in certain ways that are really hard to truly get through other tools. If you were looking for something that I believe is open source and that you can run locally as an alternative to Lighthouse, there is Web Page Test, which is a piece of testing software that is developed by Peter Heitskog, if I remember correctly, at the Wikimedia Foundation. And that is public and can do some of the same things that Lighthouse can. There's a couple of commercial but not truly open source providers that provide better interfaces into the data like this. But I'm personally not aware, although also not my area of expertise, of any like truly fully functional open source platform that replaces all of the functionality of Lighthouse.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you are not necessarily the right person for this, but you might know who to redirect to. Somebody is saying, greetings. My question is, why can a normal media player integrate it to the system, or at least allow you to transfer the content to an external player? The picture is playing, the sound is miserable on the browser, the same material on the same machine downloaded on another player. It's much nicer and enjoyable. I don't think that is the right place for that question. So if you don't want to answer, it's okay.
No, it's okay. I saw this question and I actually back channeled on it before this meeting to try and understand if somebody else might know exactly what they're talking about here. I think that it sounds like the problem here is that the video is not playing well in Firefox. The reason I think that there is no functionality to play video somewhere else is that it's supposed to play well in Firefox. If it doesn't play well in Firefox, that is a bug. And I think we'd love to know about the bug and be able to diagnose it and fix it. We know there exist some issues, particularly with playing back video, but we, without knowing which issue it is, we can't really do anything about it. The other part of the question, why is it not easier to get the media out and downloaded onto the machine and then played in some alternative player? I think that is mostly an interfacing problem. I don't know. There's probably complex relationships there between like decisions in web standards and not wanting to interfere with a website's own design choices, right? It's easy for a website to offer you a download button and make this possible, but the reality is that most sites don't.
Good. Someone is also asking about where is the best beginner to start with contributing in Firefox. I will reply that on the chat on some links, especially on what exactly we want to do in Firefox. Is it code contributions? Is it localization? Is it join us and help other users? Shameless plug on the support side. So there is a lot of different things that you can do on contributing with Mozilla and Firefox. So I will reply that on the chat. And I see Paul has a follow-up also question. So Paul.
No, thank you. Talked about tooling in terms of Profiler, which is in desktop. What about performance issues that people might report on Phoenix, Focus, Firefox for iOS on the mobile products?
Firefox for iOS is complicated, whole different beast. I know very little about it because the underlying web engine is just WebKit, right? Because of Apple's lovely choices. You can read the EU briefs if you're interested in that. So on other platforms, on Firefox for Android, the profiler works. You got to enable the developer mode. But once you've done that, you get a button to start and stop it, and you can send that profile onto a desktop machine and onto us. So that tooling all exists. I noticed that there was a question to demo some level of tooling. So if we have time left, I can at least demo how to do it in the desktop browser.
Thank you.
Yes, that would have been my last question. I wanted to make sure that we have all the questions first before we go into the deep depths of demoing. I think that is one of our last questions. A general question and returning to memory, how much the number of tabs influences Firefox performance? How much does it cost in terms of memory to keep hundreds of tabs? I think Michael also said that you have hundreds of tabs, and Bas said that's not a lot. So actually, how much do tabs cost us?
So it matters a lot. When I said that's not a lot, the interesting detail in that I purposefully left out is that most people that have that many tabs don't have most of them loaded, right? They just have poor tab discipline, and so it builds up to a list of thousands, but the ones they've actually used this session is only like 10, right? So and having 100 tabs loaded actually is quite a lot. And so that can easily build up during a session. Now, having said that, how much does that impact performance is quite a device-specific and complicated question to answer. So on desktop, we never unload tabs. Tabs never get unloaded. And so it will build up a memory load. However, if you haven't used most of your tabs for quite a while, the memory that they're using is likely mostly paged out, and it probably won't affect your performance that much. If you're switching between a large amount of tabs that are all using quite a lot of memory, very frequently, then the paging story becomes much more complicated, and it actually can affect your performance quite a bit. I guess to highlight this really quick, what we say when we say paging is if memory is not used for quite a while, then the operating system itself will actually go and store it on disk or something like that, particularly on machines with not much memory. And so if the same memory is not used for quite a while, and if the same other bit of memory, which would be the tabs that you are frequently in your foreground, are being used a lot, then that problem is kind of solved, mostly handled by your operating system. Whereas if you switch between tabs a lot, then the operating system won't really have a way to deal with that. And so Firefox will have to try and keep accessing all that memory, and that will start bumping into each other and will actually affect performance quite badly.
We have some follow-up questions around that. Aren't tabs unloaded automatically? I believe I've seen such info somewhere.
I do. So that is a thing that has been discussed a lot. I do not believe at the moment we do this on desktop.
All right. Well,
I could be wrong.
today
So by all means, I could double check this, but because I was recently asked again about this idea, so that makes me believe that we're not doing it.
and there you go. All right. We have 8 minutes left, and I'm wondering if anybody else, either in the Zoom room, Matrix, YouTube, have any other questions, has follow-up questions. Otherwise, I am gonna let Buzz a little live demoing, and what can go wrong? Everybody knows in the web. So any last questions folks might have? Let me also check YouTube. All right.
I've jumped in with one more question. Did we touch on that question from Denny?
Which one?
Tabs being unloaded automatically.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So, Buzz, if you want to do some live demoing, you are very welcome to. For those who are watching this afterwards, feel free to ask the questions afterwards by sending over the threads that to Kiki and I, who will try to pass them to Buzz on time and get you answers. And very happy for everybody who participated in this. And this has been very helpful. Also, again, thank you a lot, Buzz, for being here and answering community questions, and all to the folks that have submitted those questions. I have learned a lot of things, and I am in this organization since 2012. So you live, you learn. Buzz, the floor is yours.
Okay, so the thing I'm going to demonstrate here, we have 5 minutes, and I think I can easily do it in that time, is if you have a performance issue, what can you do to help us? And so I'm going to share, let's see, my Firefox Nightly screen. Let me know if that is appearing solidly for all of you. Now, let's say I have had a performance problem, and let me go to a website that I know has some issues, which is this website. Let's hope it still exists. So yeah, there you go. I thought this was quite cool. It has like a bunch of images and it screenshots website, and it's not great, right? I hope that it's clear on the video, but it's like it takes time to come in. It like doesn't respond very quickly, has white things. All right. So now what I do is I open a new tab and I go to profiler.firefox.com. What I can do there is there's this little thing here which says Enable Firefox Profiler button. I click that, and a button will appear up here, and it will give me options to, maybe I should make this window smaller to make it easier for you to see. Is it easier to see like this? The icon bigger now? All right. So this is the icon now that has been added. And I can go there and basically go like, okay, what kind of settings do I want to use? I'm on Nightly, so that's pre-selected here, but it kind of depends. There's a setting for web developers that is, if you're trying to improve your own website. And in this case, let's say there's a lot of pictures in here, so I'm going to select graphics. That feels like a good way to do it. And now what I can do, the easiest way to do is I can click this button. It'll start recording. Then I reproduce the problem. So I'm just doing a little bit of this. Then I click it again. And what will happen now is I get a report here, which kind of shows me a lot of things. This may not mean anything to you, but there is a button here at the top, which is Upload Local Profile. When you click that, you will get a couple of things you can check or uncheck. In Nightly, they're checked by default. In Release, they're not checked by default because it can transmit by accident personal data, personally identifiable data. So you can't hide things like screenshots and hidden threads or other websites that you were visiting in that session. The more information we have, the better. So if you check all of these before you upload, that is the ideal situation for us. But if not, then it still can provide us with a lot of value. You click this upload button, it'll be automatically uploaded to the servers of Mozilla. And there will be a link here that's automatically selected, and you can paste that into anywhere. If you take another browser, if you paste it somewhere else, it'll just load that same profile. So that's how we can also see exactly what was going on your machine while you were having this performance issue. And this will give us data, as you can see, on memory. It will give us data on all the network requests that the page was doing. It will give us data on what the renderer was doing. So it will tell us all of this vital information that we can use to determine what the source of your problem is, even when it's unique to your computer or your setup or your profile or anything like that. And that is, I think, all that we have time for, more or less, to demo. But I hope that that really helps people provide us with the information that we need to make your experience a lot better.
Thank you very much, Buzz. Tim is asking for the article on performance. Kiki just provided of the common response. So, Tim, we can follow up afterwards on the chat to try to find that article for you for troubleshooting. With that, I would like again to thank Buzz and all of you for being here. Reminder, we have another AMA tomorrow. Tomorrow is with Web Compat team. This is a series of AMAs we're organizing this week, open to all community members as part of our virtual hackathon at the support organization. We are touching issues like web performance and web compatibility, basically because that's what most of our users are asking us questions about. So we want to make sure that people have all the resources they need in order to understand their problems and help each other. If you haven't already contributed to the support hackathon, make sure you do. I'm gonna drop also the information on YouTube about more on those AMAs and what we get together. We're very nice people. You will see a lot of poll in the forums, answering each other person's questions. And the link is Ask a Fox, we call this event. So if you want to participate, gain badges, get some swag, and also listen to very interesting questions and explanations from different teams around the organization, you are more than welcome. Bas, very happy to have you here. Hope to have you in the future in another call as well. Everyone who participated by voicing questions, asking questions in advance, anywhere, thank you very much. See you tomorrow in the next AMA. And Andy, I believe we can stop the live stream.